go ahead and stay away from using the actual mic, so if those of you in the back cannot hear me, please give me just the sign like this or something like that. I'll make sure and speak up a little bit louder. Thank you all for attending our spring sports parent meeting. We're going to kind of go through this. The way this is set up is I'll go through a general presentation. I know some of you may have seen this multiple times. I'm going to kind of go through it quick. If you do have questions afterwards, please speak with me. Then when we get done with this, we'll go ahead and go into our breakout sessions. I'll have the dates, or actually the room set up, and it's just going to be down this hall that most of you kind of enter through. Okay? So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Quick introduction, just kind of mention some people that are pretty important with us. I've got to make sure to compliment our building principal, Mrs. Fletcher. She's done a wonderful job and has allowed me to have some great visions and ideas as to what we need to do for our athletics program. Mr. Hollingshead is the one that's in charge of our curriculum. Mr. Heiser is in charge of our attendance and discipline. And then there's myself, the activities director, assistant principal. Our spring sports coaches, we have everybody here, but I believe just one who was unable to make it. If I can, when I mention your name, just please stand so we can kind of have a name with the face, and then that way we can recognize the coach with the sport. Our boys soccer head coach, Mr. Klein, is right here. Girls soccer, Mr. Pyre, right there, thank you. Spring golf, Mr. Ligursky, he is not here. If any of you are doing spring golf, please make sure you sign up so that I can make sure and get that contact list to him. He will reach out to you with further information. Outdoor track and field, Mr. DeCray, right there. And then finally, spring tennis, right over there, Mr. Anderson. Those are our coaches. Two other people that I feel are really important, obviously our superintendent to be able to allow us to be able to have our programs and set them up, and then obviously Mrs. Bolton, our human resource director, allows me to go ahead and set up policies and procedures for our programs. Other members of the team, obviously what I do plays a very small part in what the activities secretary does. She does all of the work, in all honesty, and that's Mrs. Duchamp. She's right over here. When you get a chance, if you can, give her a high five, give her a hug, tell her I'm sorry you have to deal with Mr. Jasmine, whatever the case may be, but she does a wonderful job. Our athletic trainer, Mrs. Wiseman's right over here. She does a wonderful job of setting up and identifying athletes that are injured or hurt and getting them ready to go for their next activity or next event. Our teachers, they do a wonderful job in keeping us under control, taking care of our students, making sure that they're accountable with their grades, spending many hours with them, working with them. So I've got to thank our teachers, our transportation staff. In the last 2 weeks, and it seems like it's become more prevalent as it's gone through, the winter months are always an interesting deal. Calling them up an hour, 2 hours in advance, hey, I got to bump that time up, we got bad roads. Or we'll communicate with them the night before, looks like the storm's coming in, please communicate with me what you think. And we make great time adjustments. Those people that work in transportation are wonderful people. Maintenance, staff, facilities, and crew, making sure that all of our areas are ready to go. I've got to thank them. Please, when you get a chance, you see any of them, please thank them for what they do. Parents, thank you for allowing the opportunity for your son or daughter to be a part of Rock Springs High School athletics and activities. I know it's a wonderful commitment. There's a lot of values that are taught with them, and we understand that you understand that as well, and we appreciate that. Finally, I think it's very, very important to make sure that we thank the coaches' wives and husbands. They see them a lot this time of year, all the time. Matter of fact, I've heard several of them say, I'm tired of you, get out of here, go find something to do. That's actually the opposite. They're very seldom ever home, spending many, many hours with your kids. So if you happen to see a coach's wife, husband, just thank them. It goes a long way. Our philosophy. Basically, our philosophy is involving multiple sports to teach our student athletes many different values that are associated with athletics. It might be different coaching philosophy. It might be different avenues within their training. You'll notice down here it talks a lot about some of the characteristics, sportsmanship, teamwork, discipline, accountability. adversity, persistence, commitment, and a sense mostly of working as a team. So our philosophy is largely based on multi-sport participation. Helps them value some of the characteristics with regard to character traits of extracurricular disciplines. That's our philosophy. Kind of going along with that, multi-sport statistical proof. Every year, and this is the only sport that really does this. I think that there's a lot of value in other sports if they would do it, but you'll notice here, of the 32, 28 of them were involved in multiple sports, 91% of them were involved in multiple sports in their high school career. Please, get your son or daughter actively involved in other sports. Again, there's a lot of value in that. This is kind of the biggest reason, sports specialization. We talk about it, and I'm just going to read this word for word because I think it really hits home. In the last 5 years, fewer kids are active through sports due in part to early single sport specialization, which attributes to an increased risk of overuse injuries, causes kids to burn out quicker, and it decreases their overall athletic development. It's a proven fact. The research shows that. So please, get your son or daughter actively involved in multiple sports. You'll notice along with that, there's kind of what we call a long-term athletic development model. Okay? And this kind of shows you how that performance level is set up as we go through our activities. I know that there are some people that are highly engaged in it being a win at all costs. To truly effectively develop our student athletes, you'll notice that we kind of learn to trade at the ages 9 through 12, 8 through 12. Then we start to train. This is our high school career. When you get up here, training to compete. That's a big part of what we're actively involved in at this level. Then finally, your high performance level, you start training to win. Again, a part of our multi-sport model is being actively involved to understand the characteristics that are so attributed towards athletics. Through those, hard work, discipline, teamwork, all of those characteristics, we start to involve this word, win. But that's not our focus. We want them to be able to be actively engaged in those multiple sports. I know this is a lot of information, and some of you in the very back are not going to be able to see it, and that's okay. You don't need to necessarily look at it. If you'd like the information, please get a hold of me and I can send it to you. Basically what this talks about is just strength training, strength conditioning, and the importance of it. I'm going to say this, and I think this is probably the best way to state this. It is the biggest secret that everybody knows about. Our student athletes have to be involved in strength training, strength conditioning. It is the biggest secret that everybody knows about. If we want to get a competitive edge, this is where it starts. And uniquely, I've heard from several parents, also even old-time coaches that talk about, oh gosh, it's going to stunt their growth, it's going to do these things, it's going to slow them down, it's going to alter their shot. It's not true. The research shows as young as ages of 6 years old, we can start to involve strength training components, body weight exercises. A lot of us that were younger and back in the old days, because I'll use it, we were in the playground all the time doing things very, very specific to all of these type of drills. Get your students to be actively involved. And then as they get older, then we actually start to incorporate some weight to it. So again, the biggest reason for our strength and conditioning that's associated with it, if we go clear back to the multi-sport and not being specialized, preventing injuries. So again, that's going to be a big piece that we involve in with our programs, is that strength training. Again, just a little bit more information. It kind of shows the breakdown of how that's set up. I pretty much already covered that. In regard to our multi-sport model, what is that encompass? Roles of those involved. For our coaches, we really want to, in our philosophy, have other coaches support other programs. When their season's over with, we expect to kind of hear the conversation, okay, you're done with this, what are you going to do in the off season? What other sport are you going to be involved in? And if you're not involved in that, then obviously we're going to be focused on What is your strength training going to be about? Okay, for our parents, chain of command, to make sure that it's clearly communicated and understand what the value of athletics is truly about. And have that incorporated and set up. For our school administrators and staff, try to set up as many policies, procedures that help run the system more effectively, smoother. Transportation. How do you go ahead and check your son or daughter out at a competition? Itineraries, bus requests, many of those things to help with them and then support the program overall. So just in summary again, multi-sport value in regard to athletics, teach those character traits that are so important. Let our coaches be able to coach, let our parents be parents, and let our athletes be athletes. With that, it's important to note that athletics have a risk. It's just associated with them. We put our student athletes in positions that require a lot of speed, agility, power. That's where the strength training comes in. Parents, coaches, please understand this. If your son or daughter receives any kind of injury, please make sure they communicate with our athletic trainer. I'm not saying do not talk to your doctor, okay? But our athletic trainer needs to know that information. So if you happen to be in Casper for an event and you get an injury and your parents end up taking you, make sure that you communicate with your coach and communicate with Mrs. Wiseman so that she knows that information, and then we can get it documented and get it taken care of. Okay, and we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. Concussions. We do have a procedure that's set up for concussions, and obviously throughout the years it's become much more systemic, much more due process. It's very, very effective, and most importantly, our sons and daughters, safety is the #1 thing that we want to take care of. Whether you may agree or not, if there's any suspicion for a possible concussion, we are going to definitely pull your son or daughter off the competition at that time until they get evaluated. It's very important that you understand as a part of that evaluation, when you go see your healthcare professional, they may diagnose as a concussion. Our trainer may do the same thing. At that point, we need to get a healthcare professional to review it. Throughout that process, however long that may be, and please understand, it's not the same for everybody. There are different grades to a concussion, and student athletes respond differently. Your doctor will go ahead and then at that point give a release. Once when that release is given, we need to make sure that our athletic trainer gets that, and then we will begin a return to play protocol. Even though your doctor says that you are released to participate, we have a return to play protocol which is 6 days. And we'll go through that specific to the sport as to how that is, and our athletic trainer sets that up. The first day it might be some light biking. Second day it might be some jogging. And then it progresses into an actual sport-specific type of drill. Then eventually you, finally by that 6th day, you're actually into a full-fledged practice. Again, your sons and daughters' safety is our top priority, and following through with this concussion management is the best way to do it. So again, I just want to clarify, you may get a release from your doctor. At that point, that does not mean that your son and daughter can just go ahead and instantly participate or compete. We have a return to play protocol that we'll implement. Just note down here, there will be impact testing. Mrs. Wiseman will set those up for the sports, and it's for our soccer athletes and our pole vaulters. And again, she will go through that. It's a pre-assessment test to find out your cognitive levels. Then we can go ahead and use those to help determine your return to play if you do in fact get a concussion. Right across from here afterwards, there's a bunch of paperwork that each of you will need to make sure that you fill out. Some of you may have already if you've been involved in multiple sports. The website is this swol123.net. Mrs. Wiseman will be over there after this meeting to make sure and help you get all of your paperwork. There are some logins. There's a big sheet that shows you. We've got all sorts of computers, computer labs. You can get on there and you can start the process to get that done. It requires an activity handbook. Make sure you read through that, a sports physical, emergency information, concussion acknowledgement form, assumption of risk, and then health information release. All of that, except for one form, is online. So when you go through that website, you will see everything but the physical. The physical has to actually be taken to the doctor, have to have the physical. You will bring the physical back to our athletic trainer. She will go ahead and supply and keep those on file. You cannot participate until that physical is done and approved and signed off. You'll want to make sure that you hand that in, and just so you know, that physical has to be dated after May 1st of this past season, starting school year. Okay? If it's been done after that, then it's perfectly fine. Once when you get all of your paperwork taken care of and you've handed in your physical to Mrs. Wiseman, she will go ahead and give you an orange card. That orange card is then given to the coach, and that verifies to the coach that this athlete has handed in all required paperwork to go ahead and be able to practice and compete. Okay? You cannot practice until that orange card is taken care of. So for those of you that have not gotten a physical yet, or haven't done the paperwork, you need to get going on that. Obviously, for a lot of our spring sports, they start a week from today, March 4th. Again, Mrs. Weissman, she'll be in the actual library right after this, and then availability, 12:30 to 3 this Monday and Tuesday, and then on March 4th, which is the next Monday, she'll be available from 12 to 3 again. And the reason for that is she is still actively involved in a lot of our winter sports. She is required to go to some of our activities for basketball, so she won't be around for part of the time, and then the next week we've got state as well. So make sure you get your paperwork done as soon as possible. A couple items from the activity handbook. You have to be in at least half of your classes to be able to practice that day. So if you got 7 classes, you need to be in 4. Okay? You have to be in at least half of your classes that day. Every day, we'll send an attendance report, and if they're unverified, not excused, and we see that, cannot practice. Okay? Attendance on game days. This is a lot of information, so please pay attention. All athletes need to be in all of their classes on the day of a competition. If they are not, for some reason, unfortunate circumstance, you're coming to school, you get a flat tire, you show up 10 minutes late the first hour and it's game day, I'm sorry, you cannot compete. Okay? If you have a doctor's appointment and you have not communicated with me beforehand, you will not be able to compete. If, for instance, your competition happens to be on a Saturday, you're like, cool, we don't have classes that day, I can do whatever I want on Friday. It's not right. It is the rule. If it happens on a Saturday, then you're required to be in your classes the day before. All of your classes. Again, making sure that we're following through on that student athlete. If you leave, for instance, let's say for instance you leave at 7 o'clock in the morning on Friday, do you need to be in all of your classes on Thursday? Speak up.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. So that's how that's kind of set up. On doctor's appointments, just to give some clarity or anything else, please communicate with me beforehand. We don't ask you to reschedule your appointment. If you happen to have a doctor's appointment on the day of the competition, you don't leave until 11 o'clock, you've got a doctor's appointment at 8, just let me know beforehand. Mr. Jasmine, I have a doctor's appointment at 8 o'clock that morning, we're leaving at 11, what do I need to do? Here's the process. You will need to make sure that you come to the classes that you can. If it happens to be early enough in the morning and you don't need to come to classes, that's fine. Make sure you go to your appointment. You come back with a doctor's note. You make sure you return that to the office. That gives us verification. Then you're fine. If, for instance, your appointment's at 11 and you don't leave until 3, go to your classes up to the point where you need to leave. Then you go ahead, check out. I'm going to say that again. Check out. If you do not check out, it becomes unverified, and I'm sorry, you will not be able to go. You check out, you go to your doctor's appointment, get a doctor's note, and then immediately return. Check back in, and then get your doctor's note handed into the office. We have had situations where it happened to be an 11 o'clock appointment, went to the appointment, finished at 11:45, mom said, hey, I'm going to take you to lunch. They go to lunch, they don't come back until 1, and the doctor's note says they were done at 11:45. Will you get to travel? No, you will not. So please make sure on that doctor's note you return immediately afterwards. Just one other thing, make sure student athletes must ride the bus to all competitions. Unless that's prearranged beforehand, it needs to be done by me. But it is an expectation you have to ride the bus. So the classic, I slept in, I didn't make the bus, that's fine, I'm just going to drive there myself, and I'll just meet them and go ahead and compete. You cannot compete. Okay? When you return, or you want to leave with somebody else, there is a form that you need to make sure that you fill out. Typically, it's just next to the itinerary. So-and-so is my son, I'm just going to sign right next to it. You've given us a release. You can take your son and daughter at that point. If they're going with somebody else, there's a form that has to be filled out beforehand. Okay? Note down here, phone calls, contacting the head coach or activities director the day of a competition is not acceptable unless it's an absolute emergency. You've had an unfortunate death in the family and you need to get that person out of there, that's going to be the only exception. But receiving a phone call, we don't have any kind of written documentation, and that becomes a big concern. Rules of priority for the Wyoming High School Activities Association. 8 semesters is what you get. That's it. So if as a freshman, you don't go out for outdoor track, then you go out your sophomore year, your junior year, your senior year, and for some unfortunate reason, you're not graduating, and you say to yourself, oh, I got another year. No, the second you start your high school career, 8 semesters. That's it. That's all you get. So that's another reason why we want you to make sure to be involved in as many sports as possible. Must be an amateur athlete. Cannot compete on an independent team. This is the season that seems to have that happen the most. I want to make sure and just kind of clarify it. As a part of your activities through the Wyoming High School Activities Association, you cannot be a part of another program, another sport, and particularly the same sport. So we'll use soccer the most. It seems to happen there. You're part of Rock Springs High School boys soccer, and there happens to be a club program. The second you go ahead and start competing for the club program, you now lost your eligibility at the high school level. You cannot compete anymore. Even so much as to have an individualized practice. I'm a parent, I know a lot about soccer. I want you 4 kids to come with me. I'm going to give you some training on Sunday. We find out about it. That becomes an independent team practice specific to the sport. They've just lost their eligibility for the year in that sport. So please make sure you understand the independent team rule. Recruitment is not allowed. Any new student athlete that has competed for another high school in Wyoming, you must see me. I have to check your eligibility. If it's not a proper transfer, what most likely will happen is you will lose your varsity opportunity. You probably will be able to compete, but only at the JV level. So make sure you talk to me about that. And then obviously you cannot compete at a college or university team. For your participation, medical insurance forms are available. Make sure you speak with Mrs. Duchamp. You have to have insurance. We do have some catastrophic insurance that's set up through the Wyoming High School Activities Association. Make sure that you get that. Any homeschooled student, if you're not going to school here or another school, please, you must see me. I need to make sure that we have the proper paperwork that's taken care of. And until that's approved, you can't even practice. We've got to make sure that you have insurance. We've got to make sure that all the paperwork's taken care of. That orange card still needs to be handed to the coach. So, if you don't know the student athlete, make sure we find out. Cannot be 20 before August 1st, and then we'll talk more about activity credits here in just a little bit, but you have to pass 3 credits currently and from the previous semester. Student code of conduct. Obviously, we've got rules that are set up based on certain criteria. that can result to probation, suspension, dismissal, and other actions that are reasonably fitting for the program. To kind of give you a setup for that, alcohol, tobacco, and drug use, first time offense, it's a 60 activity day suspension. Can you still practice? Yes, you can. Okay, that pretty much is your season though. Once when that's over, you cannot attend any performances, contests, or special events, but once when that's over, then you can go ahead and start back towards your competitions. If you don't practice, there is a practice rule, and you would have to meet that again to be able to compete again. Second violation, it becomes a calendar year. Third violation, you lost opportunities to participate in athletics here at Rock Springs High School. Be aware that electronic media constitutes evidence. So if for some odd reason, and I hate saying this, people are out to get people, it seems like. I received a picture, anonymous, and it shows your son or daughter with a beer can in her hand or his hand. Unfortunately, you've just violated the alcohol process. So please understand, all year round. Social media, how much of an impact does this play into things? Well, interestingly, this is a great article out of the Athletic Administration. It's a little dated, but it really still does bring home the message. A couple coaches were highly interested in a student athlete. Got to watch him at practice, thinking about recruiting him, and then because it's the avenue that seems to be the biggest form of communication, they went ahead and got on his Twitter feed. Twitter feed was fine. But through that, there were also other likes and posts that were set up through their parents. Unfortunately, those posts were not very, well, they just weren't very good. And those coaches decided to go to a different direction and did not recruit that athlete. Social media plays a huge factor in that. Interestingly, it's become such an issue that we also play a factor in towards how we can affect human programs. There can be consequences associated with athletes in regard to their social media if it's posted by them in derogatory forms to their coaches, the program, school in general, even through other avenues. Your cousin, your parents, something like that, there can be consequences. Mitigation of penalties. Obviously, we understand that there's a learning process with this, so we want to give those student athletes an opportunity, if they so choose to do the student assistance program, and it's an educational opportunity to learn about the ill effects of whatever that code of conduct violation was, whether it be tobacco, alcohol, or drugs, they can go ahead and mitigate. The first violation goes from 60 days to 10 days, or the maximum of 2 contests. If you choose to do this, this does require a parent's signature, and basically what it is it's 2 4-hour classes that they'll end up having to take to go through it. If they finish that in good standing, then they only end up having a 10-day activity suspension. I want to make note of a couple things. You still have to finish the season in good standing. We've had some that have ended up getting a suspension. They go ahead and go through it. They say, fine, I'm done, I quit. You didn't finish the program in good standing. So you'll end up serving your actual 60 days now. Okay? So please make sure that you understand that. Second violation goes from a year down to 60 activity days. And then the third violation, instead of being fully kicked off of athletics, it will go to 1 year. Once when he gets to the 4th, then obviously you're done. Eligibility. Student athlete, that's how we communicate a lot. We want to make sure that we get that set up. So there are eligibility requirements that are set. You have to have earned 3 credits from the previous semester. Basically, that means you have to have passed 6 of your 7 classes. Please note, student aid, teacher aid, library aid, seminary do not count towards those credits. So if you have 6 classes and your 7th one happens to be teacher aid and you fail one of your classes, you have just become ineligible for the semester. That also applies from a weekly standpoint. So we do 2 forms of eligibility. From the previous semester, and then also for your current week. You still have to be passing 3 credits, or 6 of your 7 classes. The way that process is set up, I will go ahead and pull a report early at the beginning of the week, typically on a Sunday evening or Monday morning. I'll pull that report, I'll go through it, and I'll find out what student athletes are, one, in danger of failing and failing. I'll go ahead and signify those. I'll send it to the coach and let them know that these student athletes currently, right now, are either in danger of failing or failing for the semester. Then first thing on Monday, I'll go ahead and pull your son or daughter in and I'll let them know. Currently, you are failing this class and this class. Makes you ineligible for this week. Let's say they have 7 classes. Okay? They will have until the following day at noon to get their classes up, or they're ineligible for the week. What I'll accept is either an email from the teacher or a note from the teacher verifying that they are passing and what that grade is. If I receive that before that deadline, then I go ahead and I change the report, and then I'll send that report to the coach so that they know these student athletes are eligible or are not eligible. And then they're not eligible for that week. They'll have the next week to go ahead and take care of it. Your coaches may have in rules, if, for instance, a student athlete's been ineligible for a certain extended period of time, they may get dismissed from the team because, well, it sounds like there's other priorities that we need to take care of. Okay? Let's see if I've got everything. I think I've covered everything. Oh, one other thing just to mention real quick. If it's a change in the week, say for instance just recently, President's Day, didn't have school on Monday, then we'll just start with that Tuesday as the first day. They will have until noon on Wednesday to get their grade taken care of. Okay? Practice requirements, I'll go through this kind of quick. Girls and boys soccer, first practice March 4th. First competition March 14th. 9 practices required for competition. Tennis, first practice is actually March 25th. First competition can be March 30th. 5 practices required before the competition. For golf, first practice again March 25th. First competition March 27th. And the total number in between those days, not very many, to be able to compete. Outdoor track, same thing as soccer, March 4th. First competition the 14th. Understand that because it's unique with winter sports and spring sports, if there is an overlapping, that overlap counts towards those practices to get into their outdoor sport or their spring sport. So, for instance, we've got a basketball player, they made it to state, they finish up on the 2nd of March, okay? The 4th, they can just roll right into their practices and they don't have to worry about it, okay? If that overlaps. Each day only counts as 1 practice. Okay? Fundraisers. If there's any affiliation that's tied in with the school, it's the school's account.